Hello there, everyone. Okay, so we're doing something a little bit different today. We're going to be going through all of the Series 1 cards, which is something that we've just been doing on my free-to-play account, but we're going to be ranking them. So, if you're interested, let's do it together. Okay, so I'd like to think when we're looking at this that we've got 5 decent categories. We've got Pruned by the TVA, which is essentially something that you will never be playing. We've got usable, which is very niche, but they will have occasional usage. Good, as in every now and again you see them, but again, not that common. Very good, just they'll be about. They'll be very usable cards, but maybe not in every single deck or very meta. But then timeless is something where you will see it even now in top meta decks. So we've got a few differences in category. Hopefully it's a good divider. Now, I am using a pre-built tier list on here, so some of the stats are a little bit out of date, and so if you see some weird numbers, just ignore that. But yeah, let's start off with Abomination. Now, I feel like all of the Patriot level cards, I say the Patriot level cards, the ones with no abilities, you have to judge them on two aspects. So if we were talking about Abomination as just a 5/9 with no abilities, then you would argue it is D, ruined by the TVA. But we do have to consider high Evo. High Evo could impact this card quite nicely. Well, it does impact this card quite nicely when it's used by reducing the cost of the card if there are if there's negative power in play. I think it's on the enemy side. It might be in play in general, actually. So I think with that, I am actually tempted to go good. Just as far as, it's not something that's going to be in every single deck, but it's still something that's relatively usable in the sense that, again, in top high Evo shells, you will sometimes see this depending on if they're running Scorpions, and Cassandra Nova was a card in the deck back then, but it's drifted out a little bit. Thing is in there, Cyclops. Again, Series 1 cards. So Evo with Abomination can raise up a bomb to about a B, but it drops down when it's just a vanilla 5/9. So I feel like B is kind of that nice little mid ground. America Chavez, now it does say 6/9 on the card here, but it is a 1/2 in game. I feel like Chavez has had a little resurgence of late because ever since she dropped from a 6/9, as we see here, to the 1/2, I think she might have even been a 2/3 at one point. I feel like she did really drop off the radar, like no one was playing her. And even after she had a buff to essentially go from +2 to +3 power on the top deck of the card, even then she was essentially a D tier card because no one was playing her. Yeah, it feels like in the last couple of months people have thought, you know what, she's actually not that bad. So again, I think I'm just going to raise her into B. I know this is a very middling start for me, but I feel like it has become that kind of card that people are looking at again. But I don't feel confident enough in the card to say, oh yeah, it's in every deck or it's a very usable card. It's just something that people seem to be slotting into decks here and there, maybe to help with curve. But yeah, I wouldn't say it's meta defining. Next up is Angela. I honestly couldn't tell you off the top of my head what Angela's base stats are now. She has gone through that many iterations. I'm guessing she's a 2/2, maybe? A 2/3? I honestly don't know. Angela's had that many reworks, it's unbelievable. For that reason, right, I'm going to be a touch harsh on Angela, and I'm going to put her in C tier. She's a very usable card. If you were doing a draft mode and you pulled Angela, you would not be complaining. But it feels like her heights have gone. Like once upon a time, she was in every deck because she was constantly scaling. Whereas she obviously does still scale, but it feels like it's a little bit harder to get the higher numbers. There are cards that get to the numbers she used to do much better. So for that reason, she's still usable in lower collection levels. If you're a Series 1 player or a Series 2 player, Angela could fit into your deck probably very well. But I honestly just wouldn't be choosing her over a lot of cards that are in the game right now. Not Angela, sorry, we've got Angela. Angel, unfortunately, even though the stat line's different, it isn't a 1/2, it's a 2/3. It's got to be pruned by the TVA. I've with my free-to-play account, I have been trying to put Angel in a few destroy builds, and it's kind of okay in the sense that you destroy a couple of cards, Angel comes on the board, then if you want destroy again, you can just use Angel as another body to destroy. The trouble is, once you've got something that rewards all of that, like a null or a death, you get to the point where it's like, well, I don't really want Angel anyway. So Angel's ability is just very meh. So I feel like it's very safely in D tier. Now, we're going to the other end of the spectrum. Ant-Man, a 1-1, I think it is safely an S tier card in terms of what we've been, how we would define this. I feel like if we go through any list in early game, mid game, or end game, if you were building an ongoing shell and you wanted a 1-drop, Ant-Man is probably the first card you think of. So for me, that is almost the definition of timeless. So yeah, I feel like even if he's not in multiple shells, like he does tend to stick to ongoing, I believe that he's still worthy of that status. So yeah, I'm going to make that the first S tier card. Apocalypse. Still a 6/8, and yes, still gets to +4. He did have a little nerf at one point, which I felt was unfair, but he did recover from it. So for that, we are going to put him in the B tier. Unlike Ant-Man, which, even though it doesn't go into multiple shells, it feels like Ant-Man could because he's a 1-cost, and you are generally going to fill a location. So even if you're not doing an ongoing shell, like in the end game, even early game, you could still do Ant-Man in some weird, like, Angela build or whatever. You could just slot him into a deck. APOC doesn't have that flexibility. He's okay if you're doing discards, if you've got a way of increasing his power, but if you're just going to play him as a 6/8, it's a very weak card, and there are much better options for that even in Series 1. So he's got to go in A because it's a card that gets better with age. The longer you play the game, the more APOC's got value. But in this early series, he does suffer a little bit, whereas Ant-Man, by comparison, you could play him anywhere and he will still have that value. So yeah, for me, just got to drop down a little bit. Now, the next one's Armor, 2/3, and this one is very difficult because for me, it could easily go in either of S or A tier. And you know what? I am going to be a little bit silly. It feels silly, and I'm going to go S tier. Now, I'm going to contextualize this just a little bit. That if I were to do like a ranking of every card that has been in the game, so we're talking all the series, I wouldn't say it's an S tier card in that context because, Armor seems to be getting cut out of a lot of decks at the moment. But I feel like Armor is also a timeless card in the context that I don't think it has ever been buffed or nerfed. It is just consistent. So if you are looking for a card that is just good against destroy decks, or is helpful if you're playing like Destroyer for yourself, which granted Series 1 we're not talking about, but later on, Armor's just got that usability for both offensive gameplay to stop your opponent doing something, but also defensive play if you want to protect something. So yeah, for me, I feel like you've got to consider it as a timeless card, even if maybe it's had better days. I still don't feel like it's a bad, or it's got bad. I feel like maybe we've just, as a player base, got a little bit more greedier and started to cut cards like Armor, where even now you could argue there's still a use for it. It's just we don't use it when we should. So next up, we've got Bishop, and I think the stat line has changed here from a 3/1 to a 3/2. Honestly, it feels a little bit like Bishop needs support in the game at the moment, so I'm going to put Bishop down here in the C tier with Angela. When I first started playing the game, Bishop was one of those cards that was really, really meta. I remember there were like these Sarah lists that were, again, Sarah Series 3 card. But you'd have these decks where essentially you'd play Angela maybe turn 2, Bishop turn 3, whatever on turn 4, Sarah turn 5, which reduces the costs of your hand, and then you just do a load of plays on turn 6, and that would charge up Bishop. So again, it had use once upon a time, but it really has faded, and because of that, I can't really put it into anything either and see, but I don't really know what they could do to buff Bishop either. I think if you went to +2 per card played, especially in Series 1, it could be overpowered. Well, it's slightly overpowered anyway. But I think if you just increase the base power, it wouldn't really make it that much more playable. So maybe what it just needs is more cards to play with. What I would also argue, right, this also fit into a deck once upon a time with Hitmonkey, again, Series 3 card, but there was this notion of being able to just do like a final burst play with Hitmonkey and Bishop on the board. So it feels like Hitmonkey got nerfed not long after it came out, and that sort of archetype fell away with it. So maybe if Second Dinner decided to revisit it, maybe they could actually just rebirth that archetype, because it was a little bit overpowered, but I think how the game's changed in the time, I think we could afford to maybe try and lift that archetype up a little bit. Blade. 1-3. I've just realised my phone is not silent. Oh, maybe it is. Never mind. Blade, a 1-3. Discard the rightmost card in your hand. Now, I've got to admit, this is a very niche card in this sense, so I feel like it does fit into A very nicely. We've talked about APOC and the idea if you can discard it, get more power, great. Blade APOC is a brilliant pair if you can line it up. Again, as an early game card, Blade is not that useful. Unless you're literally doing what I've just said, Blade APOC, you're probably not going to get the best targets for a Blade. But as the game you play the game for longer, Blade gets better. So it's like when I'm playing the free-to-play account right now, I haven't played much of Blade at all, or Apocalypse, but I know I will at some point once I get more discard cards. So I feel like it's something that, in terms of if you were just doing Series 1 as its own game, you would probably put it into D. Same with APOC, to be fair. But if we're looking at the longevity of the game, I feel like they have to go into A tier at least. So, yeah, good card. Now, Blue Marvel, a 5-3. I'm sure that it did have different stat lines, but it was before I actually played the game. So yeah, I feel like 5-3 has always been the stat line I've been familiar with, which I believe is +1 power to all cards on the board. I mean, for that, again, I'm just going to put that into A tier. The only reason it wouldn't go higher into S tier, and again, I'm feeling slightly harsh on it, is the fact it has sort of dropped in usability in recent years. It's not a bad card by any stretch, but I think once there was a time when, again, it was very popular. You would just throw it in and it'd be just this, oh, Blue Marvel. But now you see it a bit, but it's not the most common play. I mean, if we're talking about Zoo decks, for instance, Blue Marvel was in those decks to raise the cost of cards, usually for when Gilgamesh first came out, it was for Gilgamesh. But I feel like Blue Marvel's even been cut from those shells right now for maybe just a Marvel Boy or something. So, again, I'm not saying that Blue Marvel's become a bad card out of nowhere. It's still a very good card. But, yeah, it just feels like maybe it could do with a little bit of love. Cable. I feel like Cable is an S tier card, and I don't like saying that. It is a 2-4 stat line rather than a 2-2 stat line. And I think from when this card came out, the text has changed, or at least been reverted to what it was, which is to draw the top card of your opponent's deck. Now, as much as I do believe it has to be included at S tier in terms of being timeless, by the way, I'm covering up timeless, I'm sorry about that. I just feel like, even though the ability itself can be quite frustrating and slightly toxic, it's still a good ability. I feel like being able to just get information and to know what your opponent's playing is very useful in this game. So I can't put Cable lower, even if there are times when it will frustrate all of us when someone cables our deck, especially when it's not just one instance of it. Now, Captain America, a 3-3. I think it's still a 3-3. I know the text has changed from when I first saw the card. I think it used to be ongoing all cards in this location +1, but it's now changed to cards in this location, ongoing cards in this location +2. So I am sitting on S tier here, and I think I am going to actually leave it there. It feels a little bit harsh when I've put Blue Marvel in tier 5, but sorry, not tier 5, in A tier. But I feel like Captain America's got a few more synergies when it comes to later series cards. So Mystique, for instance, same cost, quite easy to pair them maybe on a turn 5. The other one that comes to mind, which is more prevalent, is Moonstone. It's a Series 5 card, but it's got a ability that takes the ongoing abilities of 1, 2, 3 cost cards. So Captain America, it will essentially take Captain America's ongoing ability for itself, and when you power in both of them up, it's +4 in a lane. It's very powerful. So yeah, I'm not saying again that this would be S tier like in an entire context of the game list, but I think for like what are the most important cards you're getting in Series 1 that in the context of the grander game, I feel like Captain America has to be there. Carnage, again, I feel like that does have to be S tier. It's probably the most useful destroy card we've ever been given. Just for the fact that I don't think it has ever been changed again, not in my time playing the game. And for the record, I started playing when the Silver Surfer season came out in, was it December 2022 or something? I can't remember the year the game came out, if I'm being honest. But yeah, 2/2 stat line, +2 for each card destroyed in the lane. It's just brilliant. There are other destroyed cards that are more effective, like, for instance, Venom obviously absorbs all the power it's destroyed. But I just feel like Carnage is very reliable. If you're in doubt about what to destroy, Carnage will do the job. So for that, I feel like if you go and build a destroy deck or a deck involving destroys, Carnage is just such an easy choice for it. Now, Colossus. I do feel for Colossus here because he is going into D tier. And the reason I feel sorry for Colossus is when I've been playing it in this free-to-play series I've been doing, it isn't actually that bad. There have been a couple of instances where, like, for instance, last video we did a bit of Deadpool's Diner. And when we got Cassandra's Nova Roma, and it gave all of the power to Colossus, you're thinking, oh, because the fact that it can't have its power reduced or be destroyed or moved is actually quite good. But as a 2/3 stat line, it's just not enough. It does make me think that Colossus could probably be lifted up to a 2/4. And even then, it wouldn't be great. But it probably would go from D tier to C tier, at least in terms of, a 2/4 is not a bad stat line. So, yeah, it just feels like Colossus could benefit from a buff, but I would be in favour of a full-on rework. Like, even not the ability. I think the ability itself is quite nice. It's just maybe make the stat line more imposing. Like, I think it's been spoken about before. Maybe go for a 5/10 or something, because I think that I did say this months ago commenting on one of Alex Kosher's videos, that if you've got a very high stat line Colossus, like a 5/10 or something like that, the fact that you can't Shang-Chi it, the fact that you can't Shadow King it or do anything like that, and you could Shuri that as well if it was a 5/10, it would be quite daunting, because you think, Shuri, just for the record, on reveals and doubles the location of the next, doubles the power of the next card played at its location. So if you go in one lane Shuri and, in this theory, a 5/10 Colossus, it would then become a 5/20 Colossus. But the fact that that can't be destroyed, reduced, or moved, plus you could then turn 6 use something like Taskmaster, again a Series 3 card, copies the last card's power. That would be two players getting 40 power across the board. That would be immense. So, like I say, there is something in Colossus' ability that I really do like. I'm putting it in D tier because you just don't see it, and I don't think anyone should be upset if they didn't get Colossus. But, I mean, you go and get Colossus, but you get my point. It's not a card that you should be sort of searching for. But I do think the ability is good, and I just wish Second Dinner would just maybe take a look at the card again and say, maybe we don't treat it as one of these 2-drops that is to be played nice and early, but pick it as one of these 5-drops that is a game winner. That would be my choice, but I recognise that with Series 1 it can be a problem, but I do think there's wiggle room to play with it. I personally do, but I'm not a game designer, I'm just a player, so I'd love to hear their thoughts on that sort of situation. But anyway, I'm waffling, and we've got loads more cars to go through still. Cosmo, timeless, no question about it. Cosmo is the love of my life and the bane of my life, arguably, at times. If I see a card that I don't... If I know my player's playing an on-reveal deck or playing on-reveal cards, and I know that I'm not going to want to see their next on-reveal, Cosmo is my best friend. If I'm playing an on-reveal deck and I don't want to be stopped, Cosmo is my biggest enemy. So for that reason, he is timeless. He just can work in every deck possible, but he can also just disappear from the meta for a while, depending on what the meta is. So for that reason, he has to go into S tier. He's just always there when you need him. He can silently slip away when you don't. Cyclops, I feel pretty safe going into B tier. He is a 3-5 now rather than a 3-4. It's funny that I am actually thinking, does he go into C tier even? Because, again, it feels like maybe he has been cut a bit lately, but no, I'll put him in B tier. I think maybe the 3-5 buff has helped him a touch, but yeah, this is obviously the Aiva version being taken into account as well. Granted, again, in Series 1, you won't be getting a high Evo, but like we've said, we're taking into the longevity of the game rather than just this singular pool. But yeah, I feel like Cyclops isn't bad in that context. He does get better, so we can work with that. All right, next up, Deathlok. I feel like it's a very weird card, that, and for that, I'm on the wrong screen, sorry. I think we're going to go very good, because when you do a Destroy Shell, Deathlok is usually in there. It's a very basic ability in destroying all the cards in its lane, but it's consistent. You know, if I don't really want waste Venom, and I've got a Deathlok in hand, I'm happy. So for that reason, I feel like it's got going very good. I think the reason I can't put it any higher is the fact that I've always wanted a bit more from Deathlok. Just something to make me think, oh, okay, so I haven't got the ability to... I don't want to destroy something. Maybe I could just play in its own lane and it'll be all right. But that is literally a nitpicking problem. You know, it does its job fine. It's just that sometimes it's not a nice card to play on its own. Now, Devil Dinosaur, it is now a 5-4. I feel like we've got to put this somewhere in these two categories. And I'm going to feel very sad about this, but it's going in C, I think. Okay, I need to contextualize this. That Devil Dino, when I first started playing the game, was probably one of the top decks in the game. I mean, my first video on this channel has been, it was my first Infinite deck. It does feel like it's gone down in the list a little bit, though. I mean, I feel like what Devil Dino could do with it is a base power boost, because on the opposite end of the ongoing scale, Ronan the Accuser is a 5-5 with essentially the opposite ability to what Devil Dino's got. So rather than counting your own hand, Ronan counts your opponent's hand. So if you were playing Devil Dino versus Ronan, Ronan's got a +2 jump on you straight away. So I feel like that would probably help if Devil Dino was at least a 5-5 to match Ronan. Because then if people are playing Ronan, which is happening in the meta a bit at the moment, then Devil Dino could be a release valve as far as, okay, if you put stuff in my hand, I'm happy because I want a full hand. So I feel like that would at least move Devil Dino up from C to B. But in general, I feel like maybe it still needs a little bit more. But again, maybe I'm just being harsh. This is where I am very welcome to people putting their own opinions in the comments. Doctor Strange. Wow, I can't remember Doctor Strange being a 3-3. Wow. Maybe it was a while ago. I've only known Doctor Strange to be a 2-4 for, or at least maybe a 2-3 for quite some time. Again, I'm going to put this down here, sadly. Even at 2-4, I feel like Strange is a good move card. I think I've actually been trying to play around on my free-to-play account with a move deck, and Strange will do a good job. But I think there's times when you just think it's just one of these cards that gets cut. And it's a bit of a shame because, again, the ability to move your highest power card, it can actually be very sneaky. You know, if you think someone's going Shang-Chi and you just go, right, yoink, let's move that card to another lane, it can catch people out, just in general shells rather than move decks. But it's just, when you've only got 12 cards in a deck, Strange is just one of those cards that tends to get cut. So, unfortunately, it's got to go into C tier. But I could understand anyone trying to push it up a little bit. We got Domino, 2-4 stat line now, not 2-3. And I'm going to put it into good category. You will see a lot of shells at the moment that have got Quicksilver and Domino in the deck. For the record, Quicksilver's coming up. And I mean, my last, it's not my last Infinite deck, the one that I did for March with the Apox season, I used Quicksilver Domino to get to Infinite. And it's simply because they give you a starting curve. You've got your 1, your 2 costs sorted. So from there, the rest of the deck is built around making sure you've got 3s, 4s, or whatever else you want. Now, even though that is good from a deck building perspective, it can also be restrictive at times. For the fact that, just supposing turn 1, Quicksilver's taken up a card in your hand, and you've maybe got a bunch of 4s in your hand that you don't really want because you're not going to be able to play them straight away. Domino can be annoying because it's going to definitively come out on turn 2. I mean that you've only got one draw where you can effectively know for certain you're going to get a card that you're going to get a new card. So if you don't get that 3 cost you want, you're going to be missing a turn, which kind of negates doing the Quicksilver Domino play. It's not always likely, but it can be the downside of it, just affecting your draw. So for that reason, I feel it's got to go into B tier, but the card itself can be good. I mean, it's the good tier, but there are downsides to it. Now, Elektra. I really don't like this. By the way, it's a 1-2 rather than a 1-1, but I feel like I've got to put Elektra in pruned. I've played around with Elektra a couple of times. You know, the Super Tech God is someone who I've seen put Elektra into a lot of decks they cook. And I always admire it because I think I can respect why you might do it. You know, like especially when we've had this meta at the top of the game with Master of the Sun and all this, where you just have a Jim Hammond or a Sunspot sort of just hanging around, just waiting to be blown up. Well, I'd say blown up in power. You know, Elektra can just go, right, I'll just take that out, and it's not the highest of cost cards. But for me, the issue with Elektra is always, if I've got her in my hand and I don't want to play a turn 1, then I am essentially dropping tempo just to hold on to her. So, again, she's not a bad card. I can understand why people have tried to use her. Okay, let me restart that sentence because I started with she's not a bad card, even though I'm describing her as prunable. She has her uses, but I don't like those uses. So I have got to put her in D tier. But again, if anyone wanted to argue she should be usable, I will accept it because I can understand why. But for me personally, I think she needs a little bit more of a buff. Maybe even just give her the ability to destroy 2-cost cards as well. Okay, we've got Enchantress. Not the 4/4 stat line we see here, but it is a 5/8. Honestly, she's going into Timeless because even though we've had even though Enchantress herself has had cost and power alterations, she was obviously a 4/4. She's been a 4/5, a 4/6, and now she's a 5/8. I feel like no matter what her cost and power, she always finds a way to be there when you need her. You know, when there's a lot of ongoing cards in the meta, and obviously you want to be able to stop them, she can be the way to deal with it. They've come out a lot of cards, a lot of decks that essentially don't need Enchantress. Like, for instance, we've got Cosmic Ghost Rider, Red Guardian, Deafening Chord, Silencers that do similar things to Enchantress. But if you know your opponent's doing an ongoing build, she is the one that will shut it down definitively. So even though those cards are like multi-tools, she's the one that is a specialist. So for that, I feel she has to go in that tier, a bit like Cosmo. Next up, we got Forge. I believe Forge now is a 2/2. I'm going to put Forge into the good category. You don't always see them nowadays. I feel like there are cards that grant power a little bit more consistently, but then again, I'm fairly certain he's still in a few top decks. Like, I think I've seen Forge in Zombie Galactic decks of late. So even if you're not using it all the time, there will be times when someone cooks something and it's like, oh, Forge would be good here. So yeah, I wouldn't dismiss what Forge has to offer at all. I just don't think he's like in this top tier of evergreen cards, but still has uses and still very good to have in your collection. Gamora. Again, I'm going to be very kind to Gamora and I'm going to put her in very good. I'm being very kind because No, I can't. I can't. I wanted to, but I thought I can't justify Gamora being higher than America Chavez or Domino, which is weird to say. The bit of me that wanted to put Gamora in very good is the fact that on paper she can be a 5'12". For the record, she is a 5'8" vanilla, but no one plays her. That's the issue. She doesn't see any play, and I'm thinking, would it be the worst thing if she had a power buff to be something like 5'8" plus 6? That's what, 14? You know, it's only a 2 power overall increase, but it might just convince people to try, because when you think about it, Red Skull's a 5'14". Well, granted, he has an ongoing ability that negates it, but I mean, surely Gamora's kind of in that category of, can I afford to take a risk that I can guess where my opponent's going to play, and if I do, I get the reward for it? So, yeah, I'm looking at Gamora and thinking, you've got an ability that really could be in very good, but because you don't see play and the fact that arguably you could benefit from a buff, I feel like you've got to go in the good category. And again, I'm respecting Series 1. They might not buff it because they don't want 5'14" Gamoras in Series 1, but yeah, me personally, just looking at the grander scheme of the game, I think she could go in there. She could go in very good with a buff. All right, Groot. Groot's got to be pruned. Again, in Series 1, it's a usable card. It's, I say usable, it's not fantastic, but it will do a job for you. After that, you will probably never play it again. In fact, I got a very nice Groot variant from Conquest a season or two ago on my main account, and I don't think I've ever played the card just because Groot is not a card I will play. The Guardians all suffer from this, so as we go through them, we're going to have a similar feeling. But yeah, it feels like maybe they all need to have a bit of extra flavour added to them, and I recognise there will be difficulty with that because they're all nearly all Series 1 cards. But yeah, for that reason, they kind of end up down here. Now, Hawkeye's next. And Hawkeye was what was convincing me to actually try and do this video. Because Hawkeye, if I'm right, is still a 1-1. But he's +3 power, so he becomes a 1-4. Now, for that reason, I'm going to put him in usable. Because you could throw Hawkeye into a bounce deck. And it would be okay. That is about all I can say that is positive. I can't help but think that Hawkeye could do with, if not a rework, just some form of power buff, because I know that obviously it went from a +3 on reveal to a +2 to a +3 on reveal. But when you think Rocket Raccoon is 1-1, that has +4 if your opponent plays in the same lane. I can't help but think, why can't Hawkeye have the same effect? Because you are essentially telling your opponent where you're going to be playing turn 2 to make Hawkeye trigger. So for me, that is the kind of reward that you're justified by. Yeah, it just feels like Hawkeye could do with that one extra power to at least, I wouldn't even say go up to good convincingly, but supposing I were to rank these actual tiers rather than just putting them in at the bottom each time, Hawkeye would probably be at the bottom of usable. So at the very least, giving him one extra power on for triggering his on reveal, it would slide him up to the top of usable, or at the top end. Moving on though, we got Heimdall. I'm going to try and speed up because I don't know how long I've been doing this, but it feels like a while already. Heimdall, he's a 6'10" currently. I'm actually going to put him in very good. I think maybe 6 months to a year ago he would have been good, but I think the 2 extra power has actually helped him in terms of you can have some sneaky plays with Heimdall, plus move as maybe add a bit of variety of late, where it's not just small cost cards that you're trying to move, bounce back to your hand, and then move again. It feels like Heimdall's got a place in the meta for move now, so I feel like very good is okay. Again, I could respect anyone who wanted it down a peg down to good, but I feel like very good is a fair slot for him. Hulkbuster, not a 3-4, it is a 2-3, merging with a card in that lane. I I will go very good. I feel like Buster still has uses in like destroy builds. It's been prominent in the Man Spider decks that have been coming out with that since that season with Man Spider was. I'm trying to remember when that was. Was that November? So it's had a bit of play in that time with the merge decks that have come out. But I wouldn't say Hulkbuster's one of these cards I would slot in any deck. Again, I'm not even saying everything on that top row is, but yeah, it doesn't define an archetype either. So I feel like A tier is solid for it. It's a good card. I don't necessarily think it needs a buff or anything, but equally, there are a lot of times when I wouldn't think about the card either. So I feel like A tier is all right for it. We got Hulk, 614. I think we go good again. I would respect why anyone would say maybe put it into very good. For me, I think the problem with Hulk is the scaling. Now, when High Evo first came out, Hulk wasn't if I'm right, an end of turn card. I can't remember if it's end of turn or if it's a different effect for the High Evo. But essentially it was ongoing. So whether it was in your hand or your deck, Hulk was always keeping track of unspent energy and would power up relative to it. And it was a little bit overpowered at the time. So they nerfed it to how it is now. I honestly liked that previous version. So for that, I feel it has to go in B tier. Just because it feels like it keeps the card in a bit too much check. I would like to see it have that ability, especially with Hulk as a character. Hulk is one of the most powerful characters in Marvel, to my knowledge. So I feel like it would be very nice for him to at least be a little bit unchained. So for that, I'm going to suggest he's in B. If he was a little bit more unleashed, he'd be easily A. So let me know what you think, folks. Iron Fist, currently a 1/3, move the card to location to the left. So I feel like he has to go into C tier, sadly. I say sadly because I've always liked Iron Fist in terms of move shells. The thing is, a lot of cards do that job, but better now. So yeah, Aranya comes to mind. It's an activate card rather than a non-reveal Aranya. But it just seems to make a bit more sense in that you can place your card and then move it. Iron Fist is usable. It definitely fits the category. But I feel like, again, Iron Fist wouldn't hurt as an activate, but in the sense of maybe you can choose the direction. But we've said this before with Heimdall as well. Heimdall would be better if you could sort of choose the direction rather than it has to be to the left. So I don't know if Second Dinner can actually work on that for 2 Series 1 cards. It does seem a bit overkill. But it would be very nice because it does seem to affect them. You know what? I am actually going to slot him up 1 level. Just to good. He probably would be at the bottom of good if we were ranking the actual tiers. But I thought I can't group him in that category. So I feel like that's okay. But again, if you think differently, do let me know. Iron Man, easily S tier. In fact, I think this is the top of S tier. I don't think you could get anything higher on this list in terms of Series 1. Iron Man is the definition of the best card in Series 1, and even the most evergreen card. I don't think Iron Man's been touched in any way in terms of nerfs, buffs, whatever. So I feel like when they designed it, it was just perfect. It's a high cost card, so you've got to position it in your deck quite well. You can't just sort of assume it'll be alright because it's got 0 power. But the ability is very strong. So if you've set your lane up right, Iron Man is just go and win it for you. So yeah, very fun card. Ironheart, 3/0 plus 3 power to 2 cards in other locations. I'm going to throw that into a good category. Again, I could argue it could go into very good. I think I wouldn't even say it needs a buff as such, because I wouldn't want power on the base. 3/1 would be probably worse than 3/0 in terms of Mr. Negative viability. But I feel like it's okay. When I've played Ironheart recently, whether it's on my main account or my free to play, you don't feel bad about it if you got cards on the board. But if it's in your hand, it's your only 3 cost, and you haven't got cards on the board, it feels bad. So for that reason, I feel like it's got to go in good. But it is better than you would think. Probably on the higher end of good, let's say that. Jessica Jones, I've got to put that in usable. And that has probably been generous. It could go into pruned, but on paper, Jessica Jones is a 410 if she procs her on reveal. So that is quite nice, you know? And if you do double on reveal it, you know, with Camotage, for instance, you know, it's a 4... Oh, hang on, let me get this right. She's a 4-5 vanilla, isn't she? Yeah, so it'd be +5, so 415. So that would be quite nice if you could double proc it. The downside is it's a heavy commitment not to play in a lane for a turn. So she doesn't tend to play for that reason. And again, it's a shame that Storm as well couldn't keep her alive, because Storm's ability is quite synergistic with Jessica Jones. So I would love to see someone cook up a good JJ deck, but yeah, just doesn't seem to be the case. We've got Kazar here, just been buffed very recently in the last OTA. Is now a 4/6. Even with that, I am very tempted to go in good tier for the fact that I feel like Kazar is a card that even now will probably get cut in decks that want 1-cost buffs. Again, there are just so many cards that are probably better at doing it. You see, I'm looking at that and I'm thinking now I've put Blue Marvel there in A tier. You know what? Go on. I will raise it up 1 tier just because I feel like these two are very similar in terms of, while Blue Marvel buffs every card on the board, Kazar buffs just the 1 costs. I can't help but think maybe if it was a 4/4 again, but with +2 power, it'd be better. So yeah, I am going to drop it down because they're essentially the same ability but target different things, and Blue Marvel just does more. So yeah, I feel like it's got to be there even with the 4/6 stat line it's got currently. I think if Second Dinner were open to doing a +2 power for the ongoing, it would go up into A tier quite comfortably. That is just me thinking that though. We got Klaw. I feel like Klaw is actually S tier. It was very recently, probably very close to the top of S tier, but it did have a nerf. I say recently, it was probably a year ago it got nerfed at this point. The ongoing ability was +8, I think, to the right location. It's now +7, but +7's still very nice, especially if you use later Onslaught the location. So Klaw's got some very nice effect, depending on how you want to use it. So yeah, I do like a bit of Klaw. I don't use it as often as I should, but very good card. I think it does warrant its place up here. Korg, 1/2, add a rock to your opponent's deck and shuffle the deck. I like that, very good. I don't think you want it buffing, because if I keep getting rocks in my deck, I'm going to get frustrated, so I think a 1/2 stat line's fair. It's not too much reward, but it is enough benefit for your opponent to play, well, for you to play it, or for your opponent to play it on you. So yeah, I think that's just a fairly balanced card. So yeah, I'm happy with that. Kraven, 2/2, now 2/3. I'm going to go very good again. I feel like it will always find homes in these movie shells with, like, I'm going to mention a few later series cards, but things like Silk, things like Sam Wilson, just cards that are just going to be bouncing around, moving around the board. Kraven just loves that passive move, essentially. So yeah, even though maybe in this early phase where we've got limited move cards, eventually Kraven will go up, a bit like Apoc and Blade earlier on. Lady Sif, I'll fit that into a similar category with these. This card's the highest cost card. At this point in the game, that probably will be Apocalypse, so you've got consistent targeting at least. It's a 3/5 rather than the 3/4 we got on the board. So yeah, I think that's pretty fair. Lizard to 2/6. I'm going to put Lizard down in good. I feel like if Lizard... You see, he did have a buff recently to get to the 2/6. He was a 2/5, you can see there. But the ongoing ability can be rough. If you're playing a deck that can remove ongoing abilities, which is Series 3 adjacent, then the ongoing ability doesn't matter. So as a 2/6, it's very good. But if you can't remove that, like say you're playing a draft mode, of which we haven't got, but let's just assume that is a thing that's coming, I just don't think you'd like to pull Lizard, because it's like, oh, I'm going to have to make sure I play that later so that it's got less chance of being played on a full lane. So yeah, it's not a bad card, but you've got to be very smart with it in terms of either your deck building or your lane placement. Mantis, easiest pruned that you're going to see. Again, I was trying to just play on the free-to-play account with some Devil Dino stuff, and I've put Mantis in the deck because she, in theory, can create a card. But not only have you got to read the lane that your opponent's going to play in, but what you get might not even be good. So, yeah, Mantis, she needs something, man. I don't even know what, but she needs something. We've got Medusa. Medusa's going in the good category. 2/5 stat line if the on reveal is played in the middle lane. I do love these builds where you can do Medusa in the mid, maybe something like Wolfsbane, and then just try and Odin that later on, and they just go up a little bit. I think there's something fun in that idea. So for that reason, I'm very happy to have Medusa there, because she can get big. You know, it's only +3, but if you can proc a couple of times, she does get quite good for a 2 cost. But yeah, I could respect anyone thinking maybe just drop her down a little bit. Mr. Fantastic, easy S tier. I'd say the buff they had recently from being a 3/1 with +2 ongoing to a 3/2. Well, hang on, that is it. It's a 3/1 with +3 now, isn't it? It was a 3/2 with +2. So yeah, the buff that it's had, where it has lost base power but it's got increased ongoing power, it's actually been very effective. Again, I mentioned earlier with Captain America that cards like Moonstone and later series have given that extra life. I'd say Fantastic as well as benefited. So yeah, great card. Definitely one that you will want in your collection in the long run. Mr. Sinister, I'm going to put that into the A tier just for the fact that I feel like it's probably not the best card early on, because there will be times when it's good. You know, like say you put it in a card in a lane where cards you play will be destroyed. You know, the fact that you could keep the clone there and just have some power without actually having to keep the base card is good. But really, Sinister comes to shine when you're able to buff your cards. So, for instance, when you've got a Gwenpool or something like that in later series that will buff your hand, buff your deck. We don't really have a lot of that. I mean, I was just looking, we've got Hulkbuster there. That wouldn't be effective because you can't play Hulkbuster into the unrevealed card. So yeah, Sinister is a card that gets better, but in this early series, he's not that great. Misty Knight, very similar to all of these we've put in B tier so far. The screen's going up a bit. Let me just zoom out a touch. There we go. Yeah, Misty Knight's okay in 8 Evo, giving power to if you've not used all your energy. Also, she's a 1/3 as well, so that's very nice in terms of vanilla stat line now compared to the 1/2 we can see there. But it does feel a little bit like I wouldn't always choose her. So yeah, maybe that's just me, but she is a good card. I'm not knocking her down for it. We got Moon Girl. I'm going to put Moon Girl in good as well, because she's a 4/5 now. She'll copy your hand or duplicate your hand. I can't remember what the actual text is for it offhand. But if you're playing anything that involves Collector or Devil Dino, very great ability. Or even Victoria Hand in later series. I always find Moon Girl just a little bit clunky, because you really want to play with a small hand so that you're not filling your hand. My worst situation is when I'm Moon Girling. I've got 4 cards in my hand, and I'm essentially only copying 3 of the 4 and impacting my final draw or my next to final draw. So, yeah, she can be a very good card, but she can also be very frustrating, depending on when she's played. We've got Morph here. Morph, I feel, goes into usable, because what it does can be very nice. what it does can also be very bad. It all depends on what your opponent's playing and what they got in the hand. So I think recently we had Ramatuk come into the game, which was a really fun effect in terms of copying passed on reveals. Morph is a flavour of that, and for that reason I've got to love it, but I also can't help but think you're rolling the dice and seeing what you get. So it's usable. It's certainly probably a good end of usable, but it's also not like top of the list either, or top of the tier. Multiple Man. I'm going to throw Multiple Man to good. He's had some recent resurgence since he got buffed to 2-4. I think I saw a couple of cooks involving him with, I think he might have been Phoenix Force. So there are occasional usages for him, but again, it's just a tricky card at times to slot into your deck. So, well, not even to your deck, but you wouldn't use him in a traditional move build. It's usually things like Phoenix Force, where Phoenix Force can then move and you've got these bigger multiple men. So, yeah, it's not a bad card. It's definitely worthy of being in good, but it fits into very specific deck builds and archetypes. Namor, easy prune. I've said it recently when we did a video on Warpath. That cards like Warpath, Namor, Orca, they need text reworks bad. They need to be higher power at base, but have the lizard effect of punishing you if you don't fulfill the ongoing effect. So if, like with Namor, his text currently is you get plus power if it's the only card in the lane. In my opinion, it would be more playable if it was 410, is it? 411, whatever the stat is. But then punish it if you play another card in the lane. I think that would at least take it from D tier to C tier, because you could at least try and silence it. Whereas as it is, yeah, 4-6 that line, you've got to hit the ongoing, and then you've got to work hard to keep it going. It's low reward for a lot of effort. Now, Nightcrawler, recently buffed to a 1-3 from a 1-2. We are going to go and put that in very good. I might even, actually I will, we're going to put it into S tier actually, because I think it has warranted that recently with the recent buff. Let's zoom out again, because this is getting a little bit short on real estate. Yeah, I feel like the recent buff just gave it a bit more viability. I've been seeing this a lot in decks, so yeah, I think that is a solid inclusion, because being able to move once, it can sometimes win a game, so very solid. Nova. I feel like Nova is probably down here and usable. Again, this feels bad because Nova, Angela, Bishop used to be cards in a deck, because you would then Killmonger and Nova would be the only one cost in your deck, so you'd be just trying to proc your own Nova, essentially. It feels like it's lost relevance. I think what they could afford to do, but I doubt they will, is they could afford to buff it to be where it was when I first started playing the game, which is that it gave +2 power when destroyed. It was a bit powerful, but I think where Nova's place in the game is, it could afford to have that increase again. But I would respect if they said, no, that's too powerful. Odin, recently buffed to a 6-10, and honestly, it was a 6-9 before the buff. It was a 6-8 at the time the screenshot was taken. Regardless of all of that, I would still say it's a timeless card. I've never had an issue at a 6-8 Odin. 6-9 Odin, I was happy with that. So a 6-10, I'm very happy. I'm actually probably less happy in a weird way, because it's now a Shang-Chi target. But yeah, the ability is just fantastic. If you're playing anything with on reveals, Odin loves it. So yeah, easy S tier. Similar to Odin, Onslaught, it's a 6-8. It will double the ongoing effect of cards. I'm going to say double Iron Man is absolutely filthy, so you gotta love it. Professor X, he's C tier at best. And I'm saying C tier at best because you can slot him into a few decks. He's not that good in them. I would love it if they could rework him back to where he was, but I don't see that happening. He used to lock down a lane. Nothing could enter the lane, except for Jeff. Just because Jeff breaks all the rules. But it's now got to the point where I don't think they'll ever revert that. I think they decide, no, we don't like that total lockdown effect. But Professor X's just got no identity, in my opinion. He can move a few things into his lane, which kind of is nice, but considering your opponent can also do it, it's mutually beneficial. So, for me personally, I would like it if they either reworked his ability. You know, you've got another version in Team Clash, so there's a starting point there. Or you've got to give him a power buff. I mean, he's a 5-2, I think, at the moment. Maybe even a 5-1. I think it's a 5-2. Honestly, he could go up to 5-4 or 5-5, and I don't think it'd be that oppressive. So, me personally, I just think he needs something to make him more playable. Punisher, a 3-3, also going unusable. It again is very close to being unpruned, but I do think there is an effect there that is kind of okay. I mean, I've actually got to infinite once using Punisher, so it isn't like the worst card imaginable, but there are much better. So I think for that reason alone, it goes into C, but anyone wanting to put it into D and prune it, I would not blame you. Quicksilver's going into good for the same reason Domino did. I'm going to say they just make a good pair, so similar reasons, similar drawbacks. Going to say both line up the same. Rocket Raccoon is going into good because if you're playing a bounce deck or something that is bouncy, Rocket's great. If you're not playing a bounce deck, Rocket is not great. So yeah. Actually, I think Rocket is now a 1-1 with +4. I think he is. I'll have to check in game. So I think that picture's out of date. But yeah, the effect is great. If you can keep replaying it, it's a great effect. So yeah, definitely worth inclusion. Scarlett Witch. I am going to be slightly controversial and put it in C tier because I do like the fact that she's had a little resurgence of late in the metagame. I'm actually using her in a deck I'm using right now, so it feels a little bit hypocritical to put her this low. But I feel like her effect is always random, which can be good, but it can be bad. I think the main reason you want Scarlet Witch is if there's a location that really doesn't reward you, and you've got that ability to change it. And there isn't a card in the game that is as cheap. Okay, there isn't a base card in the game that is as cheap as Scarlet Witch is to change locations. There is Omniversal Presence off Merlin as a one-cost skill, but that means you've got to play Merlin and you've got to wait for that skill to be put into your hand. Whereas you know Scarlet Witch is in your deck and you could pull it. So for that reason, I think I understand a benefit. You know, it's not like Storm and Magic that are 3 cost. It's less cost for the same kind of payoff. But the randomness can really affect things. So for that reason, I can understand why she's at 2-3 and why she's in C tier. I don't really know what you could do to buff her because you don't want to make her given as a reliable location because I think part of her whole character is chaos. But it can also be punishing. So for that reason, I think she's just right at home in C. I would respect anyone wanting her in B or higher, but I feel like she kind of just sits there as I've got a use. You might not like me, but I do a job. Sentinel, very similar sentiment. I think if you're playing something like... just zoom out again. I think if you're playing something like C3, so Cerebro 3, Sentinel's got a decent home in those decks. Other than that, I think it's not the best of cards nowadays. In fact, that's kind of why Master Mold's had a bit of a boost as well, because I think people have realised, oh, I don't want Sentinels in my hand. So, yeah, I think Sentinel's kind of usable early on. I think I even slotted it in one of my decks that I've done for my free-to-play. But as you go on, you'll use it less and less. Shocker, I'm actually going to put this into C tier. I'm going to break from the path I've been doing with these Ievo base cards. Whilst Shocker is now a 2-4, and that is a decent base stat line, I don't feel like the High Evo version does enough to push it up beyond C tier. The effect for Shocker on reveal with the High Evo is that it reduces the cost of the leftmost card in your hand. But there are so many cards in the game now that can do that effect, but to either your next draw or to even to your hand. Like, I'm thinking Pedro Fantastic for your hand, Fastos for your draw, Surge for your draw. So there are just other options that would be slightly more effective than Shocker. So I just can't slot it any higher, but I respect there might be a few Shocker fans out there. Spectrum, A tier. I feel like if you're doing an ongoing deck, you've got a choice between Onslaught and Spectrum. Arguably for that reason, she should go in S tier, but I feel like the downside for Spectrum, and I'm just trying to make sure I word this correctly, you can be playing a... For me, the thing with Spectrum is, with it being an on-reveal card in an ongoing deck usually, she can sometimes feel a little out of place. She will obviously buff ongoing cards, but say someone's done something like Cosmo, the other ongoing cards don't mind. They're doing their thing, but Spectrum will mind. So I feel like she's kind of the odd duck in ongoing decks, and for that reason I feel like she does have to slot down a little bit. But she is still a very good card. Onslaught for me is the better of the two, just for the fact that Onslaught is doubling, whereas Spectrum's just adding. But it doesn't make Spectrum bad. She's still a very good card. Also, the stat lines are on there. I think she's a 6/7 at present. Spider-Woman, unfortunately, sitting down here in the prune tier for me. I like the card. I like a lot of the variants that I see of it, but I just can't bring myself to play it. I feel like she needs something. And I say something because I'm not entirely sure what, because with being a Series 1 card and a starter card, you don't want to alter her too much because she could be very oppressive at the beginning of the game if she was too powerful. So I think she kind of sits down there as one of these cards that is very nice early on when you've got similar abilities to one another. But when you get to later collections or later series, you're very happy to forget about her, which is a crying shame because, like I say, she's got some very nice variants. The character is quite... even though I don't know anything about Spider-Woman as a character, she seems quite iconic. But unfortunately, I can't justify putting her any higher. Squirrel Girl. I'm going to put Squirrel Girl in very good. Definitely had a resurgence of late as well. I feel like the last 12 months or so, there's been a lot of Squirrel Girl in the meta. So, yeah, very happy to put her there. You know, the idea of setting tempo very early. You know, it's 1, 2, and 1 lane. 1s in the other lanes. Very good for just saying, right, I want priority. So for that, I do like her. She's got multiple uses in terms of you can use her in zoo decks or destroy decks. So, yeah, a lot of things I like about Squirrel Girl. Very good card. Star-Lord. It has got to go into D tier because it's pruned. You know, it's a prune. You know, we've got no other words for it. Again, Groot, Mantis, Star-Lord, they need something else. They need a special sauce because they just don't have much going for them. Yes, you could argue +4, is it? I think he gets now. He goes up to 2/6 if you get the on reveal. It's nice, but it's not great because you've got to read your opponent, and you know it's just not much if you get the read right. That's the only way you can put it. You know, 2/6 is like Lizard if you've not propped his ongoing. That's a lot of effort. Strong Guy. I'm going usable. It isn't a 4/4, by the way. It's a 3/3. And the effect is a little tricky to pull off. I actually played a Strong Guy deck today. And it's all right. It's just the game's got so... There's so many decks now that put out a lot of power. Strong Guy just can't compete with that. So he is usable, especially early on. You could maybe build some discard decks that could take advantage of him. But honestly, I wouldn't. Swordmaster, 3/7. I am going to very barely put him into usable. The stat line is great, 3/7. Honestly, you could just put him in the deck for that reason. What goes against him is his on-reveal effect. Thankfully, it's better than it once was. Once upon a time, it would have been an easy prune card. Whereas now he discards an odd costed card from your hand, which can be good. the downside is a lot of the cards you would want to discard from your hand aren't odd. So I feel like there are occasions where you could use him. I think I actually hit Infinite with him recently when Weapon H came out. But I feel like I forced him in that deck a little bit, whereas other people just went with other cards like Corvus Glaive, for instance. So that kind of sums up his problem. He's got high power to justify a very awkward on-reveal effect, even now. Thankfully, it is what it is now, because when it was a random card in your hand, he was atrocious even for the power he had. So yeah, he's usable, but that is the best I can say, really. The Thing. I'm going to put the Thing in good. He's a 4/7, I think, now. And if I were to like rank the tier, I would probably put him mid to lower of the tier for the fact that the on reveal in high evo is quite nice, afflicting each enemy card once. But I'll say each enemy card, 3 enemy cards once. But I don't know. It feels like he could do just a little bit more at times. But we've seen it can be oppressive, so I kind of get why it's probably as it is. It's just the greedy bit of me would like more. Uatu. Unfortunately, Uatu needs to be pruned. I do like the ability. I would love it if I could use Uatu a little bit more, but I just don't ever see a time to use Uatu. The effect should be brilliant. The idea that you can see the locations at the start of the game and you can plan around them. But my issue is, why would I do that? You know, it's a card that you've got a nice effect, but the cost and the power, well, sorry, more so the power, there's no reward. You know, it feels like it would need to be a 1/4 to be usable. And even then, it's like, once it's done it won't be doing anything else. So the 1/4 would pretty much just be for stats. But then everyone would run Uatu, so it would have to get nerfed. Uatu's just that card, isn't it? It's just going to be sort of stuck in mediocrity, because even though the effect is good, it's hard to see people choosing to play it. White Queen, Emma Frost, if you prefer. 3/5. I feel like she's pruned, and that saddens me, because when I first started playing the game, she was a very solid card. At a 3/5 stat line, she's got better. She probably doesn't deserve pruning since then, but there are other cards again at that sort of stat line that do a much better job. And because of that, I have to put her in pruning. She needs something, even as a starter card. She needs something that says, okay, so I not only draw the highest cost card, but I also do either that or she needs more power. She needs to be, I don't know, a 3/7 maybe, just to justify the fact that you're putting a high cost card in your hand. So yeah, maybe I'm being harsh. Maybe she could go C, but I feel like that is probably where she warrants being. White Tiger, Timeless, adding a now 10 power tiger to your hand, fantastic. Even when she was doing 8 power tigers, it wasn't the worst. So she's had 2 buffs of late, a bit like Odin. Again, I was happy with both. So yeah, anyone playing White Tiger in your deck, you're probably happy right now. Wolfsbane. Wolfsbane goes unusable. I said it recently that I haven't played her much, and it feels harsh because she isn't actually bad on reveal. You know, if you were to put Wolfsbane on a Wong lane or a Camotage lane, she would be quite powerful. It's just no one ever does it. And again, I feel like it's one of those that probably if people just cooked a bit and thought of her, they'd be like, oh, she's actually decent. I don't even think you want buffer because she could be too powerful. So yeah, it just feels like until the right car, the right deck comes out, she kind of has to be C. But it feels very harsh as well, if that makes sense. All right, final 2, Wolverine. I want to say timeless, but I am going to go very good. I feel like there are some destroy decks that are now cutting Wolverine in favour of other cards. I don't personally think that means Wolverine is at all bad. I think it's just he's probably dropped off that timeless perch. He was a 2-2 then, he's a 2-3 now, so maybe that means he could go to 2-4. I don't know, but I'm not even calling for a 2-4 because I think 2-3 is a solid stat line. So yeah, I think he's very good. I think maybe some people are just trying to move away from him a little bit, but you play him in a destroy deck or even play him in early discard decks, he's going to be good. So yeah, not a bad card at all. And finally, Yondu. Yondu can go in good. I don't think I've actually played him on the free-to-play account yet. The ability is to banish the banish the lowest cost card in your opponent's deck. I did prefer his old effect where he destroyed the lowest cost card of your opponent's deck. It just felt nicer having a destroy effect rather than a banish. I think they were trying to move away from death having effects in mill decks, but I don't know. It just feels like the banish has kind of taken away some of the viability of the card. But it's still being seen in these mill decks, so it's probably not hurt it that badly. It's just taken a bit of the edge off it. But yeah, that is it. Let me know what you think, folks. How long have I been recording this as well? Wow, I've been recording for well over an hour. So, God help what I'm going to be like when we get to Series 3, 4, and 5. But yeah, if you like this video, please hit the like button and leave a comment. Tell me if you've got any different opinions. I'll be back doing Series 2 next week. And yeah, if these two videos do well, I will go on to Series 3, 4, and 5. So yeah, do let me know if you want that in the comments, folks. But yeah, tomorrow we're going to have a preview of the next card, which is, just trying to remember off the top of my head, it is Polaris, Horseman of Pestilence, is it? Or Horseman of Famine? I've said it before, there are so many Horsemen at the moment, I can't remember what all their effects are. Horseman of Pestilence, there we go. So we'll go through some deck guides and whatnot, well, not deck guides, but deck previews, and we'll try and just get an idea of what the card's all about. Then Wednesday we'll have a couple of decks when the card's in action. Thursday we might do another Polaris deck, we'll see. And then Friday is free to play day. So if you're interested in any of that, make sure you subscribe to the channel, folks. Hope you have a good rest of your day, everyone. Goodbye for now.